In June of 1720, the harbor at Piracy Bay should have been safe. Fishing crews crowded the shoreline repairing nets beside long rows of drying cod, while supply boats moved between anchored vessels carrying salt, barrels, and fresh water. The Atlantic there was cold enough to numb a man's hands within minutes, and most captains worried more about storms than war. Pirate ships rarely came this far north. There was no reason for them to. Then, black sails appeared beyond the harbor entrance. At first, several fishermen mistook the ships for merchants searching for shelter. By the time the guns became visible through the fog, escape was already collapsing into panic. One vessel blocked the mouth of the bay, while smaller pirate sloops slipped inward between anchored ships. Cannon smoke drifted low across the water. Men abandoned decks and ran directly into the freezing surf rather than wait to be boarded. The pirate captain directing the attack wore crimson cloth instead of the torn seacoats most sailors expected from outlaws. Pistols hung across his chest. Witnesses later remembered how calmly he moved during the raid, as if burning a harbor full of ships were routine work. Before we dive in, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more untold stories from history's darkest eras. His name was Bartholomew Roberts. By then, merchant captains crossing the Atlantic had already started changing routes because of him. Insurance prices rose on ships sailing alone. Governors in Caribbean ports exchanged warnings, carrying his description from colony to colony. Some convoys delayed departures for weeks, waiting for naval escorts rather than risk meeting him in open water. And Roberts had reached this point in less than 2 years. That was the part governments struggled to understand. Pirates were not unusual in the early 18th century. The Atlantic carried too much wealth across too much water for violence to disappear completely. But most pirate captains stayed inside one region. Some hunted near the Bahamas. Others targeted the shipping lanes around West Africa or the Caribbean islands. Roberts hunted the entire ocean. A merchant crew might hear reports of him attacking Portuguese ships near Brazil, only for another sighting to emerge weeks later near Newfoundland. Before naval patrols adjusted, he would already be somewhere else entirely. He moved so quickly across Atlantic trade routes that rumors often arrived before proof did. The speed came from the same thing that eventually made him the most successful pirate raider of his age. Roberts understood the sea better than the men chasing him. He had grown up along the coast of Pembrokeshire in western Wales, where boys entered maritime work early because there were few other futures available. Fishing vessels and merchant ships moved constantly through the harbors there, carrying coal, timber, cloth, and food along the Irish sea routes. Roberts went to sea young and stayed there long enough to become something rare in the Atlantic world, a sailor who understood navigation at a professional level. That mattered more than most people on land realized. Crossing the Atlantic was not simply a matter of sailing west. Ships depended on specific wind systems that changed with season and latitude. Merchant captains leaving Europe angled south toward the coast of Africa before turning west into the trade winds carrying them toward the Caribbean. Return voyages followed different northern currents back toward Europe. A captain who understood those movements could predict where merchant traffic would appear weeks before it arrived. Roberts learned those patterns as a merchant sailor long before he became a pirate. By his 30s, he had crossed enough routes to understand where ships slowed, where storms trapped them, and where overloaded cargo vessels struggled against shifting winds. In 1719, he was serving aboard a slave ship called Princess near the coast of West Africa when that knowledge changed his life. The voyage had not yet loaded human cargo, but the lower decks already carried iron restraints bolted into the beams for the captives expected later along the Guinea coast. Roberts worked as second mate aboard the vessel, responsible for navigation and discipline during a trade system that connected Europe, Africa, and the Caribbean through money, violence, and forced labor. Then pirate sails appeared. The captain leading them was Howell Davis, another Welshman who operated very differently from the loud, reckless image most people associated with pirates. Davis preferred deception. His ships often approached under false flags until merchant crews realized too late that armed men were already boarding. Princess fell quickly. Roberts reportedly resisted joining the pirates after the capture, but refusal meant very little at sea. Skilled navigators were difficult to replace, especially navigators familiar with Atlantic trade routes carrying enormous wealth between continents. Davis needed Roberts alive far more than he needed another ordinary crewman. At first, Roberts looked completely unsuited to piracy. He disliked excessive drinking. He avoided gambling. He carried himself more like a naval officer than an outlaw. Later accounts from surviving pirates described him enforcing strict discipline aboard ship once he gained authority. Lights were extinguished early to reduce fire risk. Gambling disputes were restricted because they damaged crew cohesion. Musicians rested on Sundays. None of that sounded like the behavior of a pirate legend. Then Howell Davis died. Only weeks after capturing Roberts, Davis sailed to the island of Principe, hoping to negotiate with Portuguese officials there. Instead, the meeting turned into an ambush near the harbor settlement. Gunfire erupted before Davis, and several crewmen could retreat back toward the boats waiting offshore. The survivors escaped. Their captain did not. Pirate ships operated differently from Royal Navies or merchant companies. Captains ruled only while crews believed they could deliver survival, speed, and profit. Failed too often, and authority disappeared quickly. Roberts had been a pirate for barely a month when the crew elected him captain. Part of the decision came from necessity. He already understood navigation better than most men aboard. But another part came from what happened after Davis died. Roberts did not hesitate. Instead of trying to escape the pirate life while he still could, he accelerated into it. The same discipline that had made him valuable aboard merchant vessels suddenly made him terrifying aboard pirate ones. Roberts attacked quickly, stripped captured ships for supplies before pursuit fleets could react, and kept moving before governors exchanged enough information to track him properly. He treated piracy less like chaos and more like logistics. That was why the captures multiplied so rapidly. Near the Lesser Antilles, his crews intercepted merchant vessels slowed by narrow island channels and unpredictable currents. Off South America, pirate lookouts identified heavily loaded ships simply by the way they sat lower in the water. Roberts focused on valuable prizes and avoided wasting time on ships carrying poor cargo. Every successful raid made the next one easier. Captured vessels strengthened his fleet. Merchant sailors joined voluntarily because pirate shares often paid better than lawful wages. Fear spread from port to port through surviving captains carrying stories about a pirate commander who moved faster than anyone expected and seemed to know Atlantic trade routes as well as the merchants using them. By the beginning of 1720, Black Bart Roberts was no longer just another pirate attacking isolated ships. He was becoming something much more dangerous. He was becoming efficient. By the middle of 1720, Black Bart Roberts had become difficult to track even for the merchants hunting him on maps every night. One report placed him near Barbados, attacking sugar ships moving north through the Caribbean. Another claimed he had crossed toward the coast of Brazil, where Portuguese convoys carried gold, tobacco, and silver through Atlantic routes worth fortunes back in Europe. Weeks later, fishermen in Newfoundland described pirate sails emerging from the fog hundreds of miles farther north. The distances alone sounded impossible. Most merchant captains spent their careers repeating the same trade circuits because Atlantic crossings exhausted ships and crews alike. Storms snapped masts, saltwater ruined food stores, scurvy weakened sailors until swollen gums bled across their teeth. A single bad season could destroy an entire voyage financially. Roberts kept moving anyway. That constant movement became the center of his strategy. Naval patrols depended on information traveling between ports, But information at sea moved slowly. A governor in Jamaica might hear about an attack near Martinique only after Roberts had already crossed into another region entirely. By the time warships adjusted course, he was usually gone. He was not the strongest pirate captain in the Atlantic. Near the Windward Islands, Roberts intercepted merchant vessels carrying sugar and textiles through narrow channels where shifting currents slowed heavily loaded ships. Off Suriname, his crews targeted isolated traders, moving away from larger convoys. Then came the raid that spread his reputation farther than any attack before it. The waters there felt completely different from the Caribbean routes Roberts usually hunted. The air carried freezing Atlantic fog instead of tropical heat. Fishing stations lined the rocky shoreline beside racks of drying cod and rough wooden shelters blackened by smoke from oil fires. Hundreds of sailors crossed there seasonally because European markets demanded enormous amounts of preserved fish capable of surviving long voyages. Those fleets expected brutal weather. They did not expect pirates. This brings us right back to that freezing morning in Piracy Bay we witnessed at the beginning of our story. When Roberts entered the bay, panic had moved through the harbor before cannon fire even started. Some fishing crews cut anchor lines hoping the current might carry them away fast enough to escape. Others abandoned their ships immediately and ran inland across the rocks, while pirate crews boarded vessel after vessel, almost uncontested. The attack lasted only a few hours, but the damage spread much farther than the harbor itself. Merchants financing those expeditions lost entire seasons of profit. The already high insurance prices climbed even further. Captains sailing north the following year armed their ships more heavily despite sacrificing valuable cargo space. Roberts had done more than steal supplies. He had forced Atlantic commerce to start adapting around him, and with every successful raid, his fleet became stronger. Captured ships were rarely wasted. Fast sloops capable of pursuit often joined the squadron directly. Cargo vessels supplied timber, sailcloth, medicine, food, and navigational tools that would have been difficult to replace otherwise. Skilled sailors were sometimes forced into service, especially carpenters, navigators, surgeons, and gunners. Roberts understood that survival at sea depended less on treasure than maintenance. A damaged ship could sink weeks after battle if repairs failed. Wet gunpowder became useless. Torn sails slowed entire fleets. Fresh water spoiled quickly during long crossings. Roberts organized his operations around keeping ships moving because once movement stopped, vulnerability began. That discipline separated him from many other pirate captains. Survivors who encountered Roberts often described the same unsettling detail afterward. Merchant crews expected shouting, drunkenness, and chaos from pirates. Roberts behaved differently. He dressed carefully, controlled his crews aggressively, and rarely appeared uncertain during attacks. Some prisoners later compared him less to a criminal and more to a naval commander who had simply abandoned the law entirely. The victories started changing him too. At first, Roberts had entered piracy unwillingly, but success transformed the scale of what became possible. Captured wealth brought larger ships, larger crews, and greater freedom from the world he had originally served as a merchant sailor. The more victories accumulated, the more difficult it became for him to disappear back into ordinary life. And the victories kept coming. Near Brazil, Roberts intercepted one of the richest prizes of his career when his fleet struck a Portuguese convoy carrying gold and luxury cargo. The capture spread through Atlantic ports almost immediately because it embarrassed powerful merchants and colonial officials alike. Stories about Roberts grew larger after every crossing. Some claimed he commanded entire squadrons capable of overwhelming small naval escorts. Others exaggerated the size of his fleet until rumors turned him into something closer to myth than pirate. Roberts encouraged that fear. He understood reputation could defeat ships before battle even began. Some merchant captains surrendered immediately after recognizing his flags because resistance usually meant bloodshed, followed by capture anyway. Others tried fleeing the moment pirate sails appeared on the horizon, only to discover Roberts preferred fast vessels built specifically for pursuit. Before we continue, we want to hear from you. Imagine you are on one of those merchant ships. If you saw Black Bart Roberts approaching across open water, would you fight or surrender? Let us know in the comments. By 1721, Roberts was no longer operating like a raider surviving voyage to voyage. He was beginning to look like the commander of a floating state. Multiple captured vessels traveled beside his flagship, carrying prisoners, cargo, supplies, and extra crews. Pirate articles enforced rules governing discipline and the division of plunder. Signals coordinated fleet movement during pursuit and battle. Roberts even changed his flags depending on the enemies he wanted to intimidate most. Governors across the Atlantic noticed the same problem at the same time. Black Bart Roberts was no longer attacking the edges of Atlantic commerce. He was striking directly through the center of it. By the beginning of 1722, Black Bart Roberts had spent nearly 3 years moving across the Atlantic faster than most governments could react. Merchant captains knew his name from the Caribbean to the coast of West Africa. Insurance companies tracked his attacks closely enough that some voyages became dramatically more expensive the moment reports placed his fleet nearby. In certain ports, sailors refused contracts entirely if rumors suggested Roberts was operating along the route ahead. The strange part was how quickly it had happened. Most pirates burned brightly for a few months before disappearing into storms, prison cells, or shallow graves beside colonial harbors. Roberts kept expanding. Every successful capture strengthened his fleet, increased his reputation, and pulled more experienced sailors into his orbit. By now, many crews feared surrendering too slowly, almost as much as they feared resisting. And somewhere along the way, Roberts himself had changed. The cautious navigator forced into piracy aboard the Princess was gone. In his place stood a commander who seemed increasingly convinced he could outrun anything sent against him. Years of victories had taught him that speed solved almost every problem at sea. If a region became dangerous, he moved. If naval patrols appeared, he vanished into another trade route. If governors coordinated defenses in one area, he attacked somewhere else entirely. For a long time, that strategy worked. Then he returned to West Africa. The waters near Ouidah and Cape Lopez carried some of the richest traffic in the Atlantic world. Slave ships anchored offshore, waiting for human cargo before crossing west toward the Caribbean and the American colonies. Merchant vessels loaded with gold dust, ivory, weapons, cloth, and manufactured goods moved constantly between the coast and Europe. The profits involved were enormous, and Roberts understood those routes better than most captains alive. He had spent years learning exactly where wealth moved and exactly how slowly governments responded when it disappeared. By now, his fleet operated with frightening efficiency. Lookouts scanned horizons before sunrise, while captured ships traveled beside the main squadron, carrying supplies and extra crews. Fast vessels handled pursuit. Heavier ships guarded prizes already taken. Roberts timed attacks carefully enough that some merchants suspected he had informants inside Atlantic ports, feeding him intelligence. The captures continued piling up, more than 400 ships by some estimates. No pirate of the era matched that scale. Roberts did not become the most feared pirate in the Atlantic because he looked terrifying or delivered dramatic speeches. He became feared because his success felt systematic, predictable, almost industrial. That frightened governments more than chaos ever could. The Royal Navy had already spent years hunting pirates across the Atlantic, but by 1722, the pressure to stop Roberts had become impossible to ignore. Merchants losing cargo demanded stronger protection. Colonial officials demanded more warships. Atlantic trade generated too much money for Britain to allow a pirate fleet to keep humiliating commercial routes this openly. One of the officers assigned to the hunt was Captain Challoner Ogle aboard HMS Swallow. Unlike merchant ships overloaded with cargo, Swallow existed for one purpose: combat. The warship carried disciplined crews, heavy guns, and enough speed to pursue pirate vessels across long distances. Ogle understood something important about Roberts almost immediately. He survived because he kept moving, so the only way to kill him was to remove his ability to escape. Near Cape Lopez, Roberts anchored part of his fleet beside shallow coastal waters where larger naval ships struggled to maneuver aggressively. Pirate crews repaired rigging there, redistributed supplies, and prepared for future raids along the African trade routes. Mangrove swamps stretched inland beyond the beaches, while Atlantic waves hammered the shoreline day and night. Then, sails appeared offshore. At first, one of Roberts's ships mistook the approaching vessel for another merchant target. A pirate ship moved out ahead of the fleet, expecting an easy capture, but Ogle had anticipated exactly that reaction. He allowed the pirates to separate before revealing Swallow's firepower. The battle destroyed the pirate vessel quickly. More importantly, it revealed Roberts' location. Back near Cape Lopez, Roberts still had time to escape after learning what happened. For most of his career, escape had been his greatest weapon. He could have disappeared back into the Atlantic the same way he always had. This time, he stayed. Maybe the victories had made him overconfident. Maybe years of success convinced him he could defeat anything sent after him. Or maybe a pirate who had spent 3 years outrunning entire empires no longer believed ordinary rules applied to him anymore. On the morning of February 10, 1722, Roberts sailed out aboard Royal Fortune to face HMS Swallow directly. Witnesses later described him stepping onto the deck, dressed in crimson damask with pistols hanging across his chest and gold jewelry around his neck. He had spent years building that image carefully because fear itself had become one of his strongest weapons. Merchant sailors recognized him instantly, but reputation could not stop cannon fire. As Swallow closed the distance, broadsides ripped into the pirate flagship hard enough to tear splintered wood across the deck like shrapnel. Smoke swallowed sections of both ships while sailors struggled through the chaos, carrying powder charges between cannons. Men screamed through the thunder of repeated gunfire as damaged rigging collapsed overhead. Then, almost suddenly, it was over. A grape-shot blast struck Roberts in the throat. After surviving storms, mutinies, naval hunts, and hundreds of captures across the Atlantic, the most successful pirate of the age died within seconds beside the coast where his pirate life had begun. His crew reacted immediately. Roberts had reportedly ordered that his body be thrown into the sea if he died in battle, partly to prevent British authorities from displaying it publicly after capture. The sailors aboard Royal Fortune wrapped the corpse and pushed it overboard before naval forces could board the ship. The man who had terrified Atlantic commerce disappeared beneath the same ocean that made him legendary. Without Roberts, the fleet collapsed quickly. Some pirates fought on briefly while others surrendered or tried escaping through the coastal waters near Cape Lopez. Captured crewmen were later transported for trial, and many faced execution under British authority as imperial governments tightened control across the Atlantic. The timing mattered for reasons larger than one pirate captain. Black Bart Roberts died just as the golden age of piracy itself began collapsing. Naval patrols expanded, convoys improved, colonial ports coordinated more aggressively. The Atlantic still carried enormous wealth, but governments were finally investing enough military force to defend it consistently. Even so, Roberts left behind something no navy could erase completely. For nearly 3 years, one former merchant sailor forced entire empires to react around him. Ports changed schedules because of him. Merchants lost fortunes because of him. Governors exchanged warnings because of him. And somewhere beneath all the myths surrounding piracy, the truth remained even more unsettling than the legends. Black Bart Roberts had not conquered the Atlantic through madness or luck. He had done it through discipline, speed, and an understanding of the sea better than almost anyone alive.